we're good.
Right.
Refresh my page. Hey, Facebook, we're here. Welcome
Hello,
to Beyond the Steps. We are so excited to have Kelsey Nelson here with us this week to talk about how we can effectively push students who lack motivation. This is that time of frustration. So we are going to talk about that. We're going to let everybody take a moment to get here into Zoom, get there on Facebook Live, and we will be with you in just a couple of minutes. I see everybody coming in on Facebook. Thank you so much for joining us here for Beyond the Steps. We are here with Kelsey Nelson talking about how we effectively push students who lack motivation. We're going to be getting started. It's 1:58 right now. We're going to be getting started in just about 2 minutes. So hang in there with us. We can't wait for this discussion. It is a very important one, and one that I think as dance educators, we all have to move and navigate through at some point during the year, especially if we're working with the older juniors, teen range, yes. 12 to 15. Yay. Love that age group. We're going to talk about how we navigate this space. So hang in there with us. We'll be back in just about a minute.
All right, everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome to Beyond the Steps. Thank you to everyone joining us on Facebook Live and here on Zoom. I'm Bree, co-founder and CEO of Apollo Performance Wear, back and here with my friend, Melissa McDaniels, who's the founder of Turning Point Dance Creations and a social justice advocate. Today, we're answering the question, how can we effectively and safely push students who lack motivation? That is a challenge, as Melissa said, for so many of us, especially as we go through the dance season and we're running the same routines all the time. And then you add, oh, by the way, a pandemic into the mix and turn everything on its head. And so I think this is going to be a really helpful topic for many of us today. Before we introduce our guest panelists for this very important topic, I want to give a few reminders. Throughout the episode, you're going to see Melissa and me looking around. We have monitors all over, and we're trying to draw you in from Instagram to Facebook to here on Zoom. We want to hear from you. So if you have comments, this is a conversation. We're all on this journey together, learning, growing, evolving for a safer, healthier dance space for all. And so ask your questions, put your comments and your experiences in the chat, and we will make sure we get those answered for you by the end of the conversation today. We just ask that you be respectful. So let's get to it. Melissa, who do we have with us today?
Oh my goodness. I have been waiting for this episode as a person who follows Kelsey, a person who has taken some of her courses. This was just the most awaited episode for me to have this conversation. So I am going to introduce her. This bio, of course, is in no way encompassing of all the things that she does and who she is. But we're gonna get it as close as we possibly can. So Kelsey has over 25 years of dance experience, ranging from major motion pictures to teaching students all across North America, judging for several prestigious dance competitions within the United States, and creating her own conditioning program for dancers, which is awesome. She received her Bachelor of Science in Dance Management from Oklahoma City University. Some of Kelsey's professional performing credits include working with choreographers like Fatima Robinson on Anchorman 2, The Legend Continues, Mia Michaels on Rock of Ages, Disney's $1 Million Arm, HSN, Royal Caribbean International, Feld Entertainment, Feld Motorsports, Cirque Productions, Universal Orlando, Busch Gardens, Hard Drive Inc., and many, many more. Along with performing, Kelsey has a passion for providing quality instruction and choreography. She's had the opportunity to continually develop both her teaching and choreography portfolio by working with St. John's University, Wake Forest University, McKendree University, University of South Florida, Victoria School of Dance, USA Ambassador Pageant, Cirque USA, bookoflashmob.com, Universal Dance Association, and many studios located within the United States and Canada. Kelsey has been honored to be a master instructor for National Dance Alliance, Universal Dance Association, and Dance Team Union in the past few years. Recently, Kelsey has joined the faculty of Thrive Dance Experience and the Bridge Training Program and is excited to be traveling and teaching with 2 wonderful conventions. Thank you, Kelsey, for joining us.
Yay, you're a busy lady.
Yes.
Thanks.
I'm so happy that you made time for us today.
Oh, of course.
Like I said, I follow you closely on social media and have taken a course with you, and your passion for working with young dancers is just evident. Like
Thank you.
It comes through the screen. Unfortunately, I've only had a chance to meet you virtually because
Someday.
Yeah, someday we'll be in person. But what is it that you love the most about shaping young dance athletes?
I think really it's not even the dance part. It's mentoring and fostering youth. And I've always known that I wanted to do that. I just never really knew how to tap into that. And I've just been lucky enough for the world to lead me where I am now. And I've realized that I can take my passion for dance and my passion for youth and put them together. And so really it's about helping the human part grow. And I just get to do that through my passion, which is dance. So I'm very lucky.
Yeah, it's such an incredible thing when you get to shape, and really the job becomes about that, right? The dance is, why we're all there, but it ultimately becomes so much more about the people and the families that we get to work with as educators. So, when we're talking about kids and, we this happens at various ages, from young to old, what are some of the traits and behaviors that show in students who are, super motivated and committed? Because that looks a little different on people. So what are some ways that you can always tell that you have a student that like this kid has got the drive, the passion, is going to go above and beyond? What are those signs for you?
Well, I made a little list, and so I'm going to share that with you.
Yes.
So I've listed down, they are timely, so they're respectful of time. They're organized. They are reliable. They have grit. They are honest. They have open communication. They're determined. They're supportive. And last, but definitely not least, is it's always a team first attitude. And those are just, there's so many other things, but those were like the first ones that came to my head when I thought of my students that are very, very self-motivated. Those are the traits that I see in them.
Yeah. Now, do you ever have, because I'm having images of certain kids come to my mind right now, but do you ever have kids that, they are so talented and they're undeniable, their passion, but they don't have some of those characteristics. Maybe they don't put the team first, or they don't, is there anything that kind of gets blurred lines a little bit? Because I can think of a couple right now that I'm like, you can't deny that kid's amazing.
Right.
But they're very self-motivated instead of team motivated.
Yeah, I think that it's like a developmental process of how to use motivation and then how to create it. And you have to have self-motivation to be able to then impact the team. So it's getting everybody to be individually motivated and then being able to like funnel that into what you're trying to accomplish as a team or a studio or a class or whatever it is specifically that you're working towards. So it's kind of like being able to funnel that in. And I think we can get talent and motivation confused. And you can be really talented naturally. And that talent is only going to get you there's so many different sayings, but your talent's only going to get you in the door. It's all of the work and the other stuff that's going to keep you in the room. And so you can't, as a teacher, it's very easy to see a kid that's super talented and be like, oh my God, I want to work with that kid.
Yeah.
And if you take a step back as an educator and you look at the whole room, most teachers are going to end up choosing to work with the kid that's motivated, because they're going to be more teachable and they're going to be able to go much further than the kid that's just relying on that talent, if that makes sense.
I love that you said that we have to really check ourselves, that talent and motivation are two very, very different things. And so oftentimes, like you said, you may have the most talented kid in the room, but it's not necessarily the one that's going to be easiest to work with.
The other thing that I love, Kelsey, is that of that list, none of it had anything to do with their actual skill level.
That's right.
It had nothing to do with their actual dance ability. Yes. It had everything to do with their mindset and their personality and how they show up.
And I think kids would be or are surprised to know that. Like, if they looked at it from a dance educator standpoint, I think oftentimes kids feel like the ones that are favored are the ones that are just, their dance ability is miles above everyone else's. And if they put themselves in the dance educator's shoes for 2 seconds, they would know that's not at all 99% of the time what we're really looking at, right?
Right.
What are some signs that a student may be starting to lose motivation? What are the typical signs that you see?
I see when somebody's motivation starts to dwindle or fade or is less evident. Usually their commitment is shifting. Their attentiveness, so how they're taking class starts to change. Their responsibility level. So if they start forgetting stuff, or they're showing up late, or they don't have the right uniform on, or things like that, just their overall responsibility starts to fall. Their communication stops, and their willingness to make adjustments and sacrifices really starts to change. It becomes very selfish in nature why they're in class, and it becomes less about the big picture long-term journey. And so the willingness to sacrifice a Friday football game to be at a rehearsal, or the willingness to let somebody else go first, or anything like that, kind of start to shift. And you can see that that their motivation and their desire is starting to change. So those are some things that I've noticed in the past.
Now, I know Melissa has a very specific question coming up about age, but I want to talk about the younger kids who, obviously priorities change as they get older, and we're going to address that. But when they're younger, and maybe they're there because they like to dance around the house, or they, mom and or dad or guardian want them to be in dance class. But, is it harder to tell with younger kids if it's a lack of motivation, or it's just that they're just free spirited and they're there to have fun, and they're not, they're happy to be there, but they're not taking it that seriously? Is it a little bit harder to pinpoint in younger kids?
I think yes. And I also think no. I think you need to, and this has changed with time for me as I've matured and had more experience. Not everybody's going to be on the same passion level that I am. So it's understanding that we as educators, dance educators, are doing this because we're genuinely passionate about it, because nobody would be sacrificing every weekend and late nights and missing their kids and all of that kind of stuff if you weren't passionate about it. So it's understanding that not everybody's going to be on that same passion level. And as an educator, we need to meet people where they are and then help them grow. And something that I did with my students, all ages, and they said that it really helped them, was differentiating between inspiration and motivation. And inspiration is something that you see on the outside that gives you excitement, gives you joy, gives you that fire in your belly, oh my God, I want to go do something. And that doesn't have to be dance related. You could see a beautiful sunrise. You could listen to a song. You could have a conversation that's inspiring. And motivation is goal-based. And when you understand that motivation has to do solely with goals and getting kids to understand that you're not always going to have inspiration and you can always have motivation, that changes the game, because you're not always going to be inspired. I'm not always inspired to choreograph something. Somebody might pick a song for a solo that like it doesn't speak to me at all.
Right.
And the motivation is, the goal is to complete that solo. And knowing that shifts how I approach it, and I'm able to do my best work even if I'm not inspired by what the song is, or who the dancer is, or whatever that might be. So I think getting little kids to understand that. So setting a lot of goals in class, or a goal a week from now, or the end of the month, we need to accomplish this. It keeps them on track at a young age. And so they don't really understand the inspiration, motivation talk, but they understand like, oh, we're trying to get 10 stickers because then we get to have a dance party.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, I'm going to keep practicing. So it's that kind of understanding at a young age that then that can lead into deeper conversations as they age and become more serious, and more time commitment, more money involved. Like they've already developed that habit at a younger age. So I think that that's a conversation that's really helped a lot of my dancers.
That's wonderful. Thank you. I love that. I love that. The difference between inspiration and motivation. I love that.
Right. I mean, it's like us going to work. I often tell my dancers, this is your job. I'm not inspired to get up in the morning and go, I'm not inspired a lot of times for all day private lessons from 8 a.m. on Saturday to 6 p.m. But I am motivated because I'm there to teach and mold these students. We have something to prepare for. It is my job. I may not be inspired to do it today, but I am motivated to reach a level of excellence. So that's so super important. So thank you for that. I'm gonna use that, Kelsey. That's officially stolen. So you'll see that on my social media pages.
Well, it wasn't mine. I read an article somewhere. I couldn't even tell you where I read it. It had nothing to do with dance, but I read it and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so relatable. And like, it literally changed even like how I teach, how I communicate with the kids. It changed how they look at it. And I did an exercise. I wrote inspiration and motivation. They tried to define the two things. It was very blurry for them. They didn't know the difference. And so then by the time we were able to differentiate it, then they were like, okay, now I understand. Like, now I get it. And like, I tell them, look for inspiration every single day, whether that's a conversation or something you read or something you watch or a dream you have. Like, find inspiration, and it doesn't have to be in the dance studio, and understand what your motivation always is. So,
and I think in the age group that I'm about to ask about, it's very important that they understand that you do not need inspiration to perform, but you do need motivation to perform. And sometimes that motivation is intrinsic. It does not have to come from an outside source. So we'll get into that. I'll go down a rabbit hole on that with this age group. But I do want to say, I've noticed that the lack of motivation that you just talked about, those signs that you just mentioned, usually pop in somewhere between 12 and 15.
Yes.
That's where the dreaded, I really want to hang out with my friends on TikTok all night. I want to only be a cheerleader because that's where I get to see my friends on Friday nights or Thursday nights, based on where you are. Do you find that that's usually where you start to see those signs? And if so, why? Why do you think that?
Or injecting one more, motivation from being, lack of motivation from being completely overwhelmed. My biggest thing that I saw was school. The schoolwork combined with all those other things, it was too much, and something had to give,
Yeah, I find the age like middle school. So here in Florida, middle school is 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. When I grew up, it was 7th and 8th grade. So like the age is like 11, 12 to like 14. And I find that age to be where it's happening, because you're right, more opportunities are presented to them, and there's typically kids are going from an elementary school where it's just that group of kids they've always gone to school with, to like a middle school that there's lots of different kids coming from different elementary schools. They're meeting more people. There's more opportunities. There's more clubs. There's more like sports, cheerleading, dance team. There's, just more social opportunities than when they were a littler kid, and their parents were more involved in who they hung out with and when they hung out with them. So that age is that's definitely where we see kids quit. I don't see, once kids get into high school, for the most part, we haven't lost any kids. And that's they've committed at that point that dance is what they're really invested in. It's that middle school age, going into high school and knowing that if they stay in dance, it's going to become a very serious thing. That it's them having to make that decision and them having to really like dive in or get off ship and go somewhere else. And I think it's having that conversation with them and supporting their decision. A lot of, and I don't own a studio, so I can't speak to like the studio owner business side, but I do know a lot of teachers and studio owners get very protective of their students. And if one leaves or decides to like not do as much, it becomes a very personal thing. And I don't see it that way. I worked at Lululemon for a long time, and we talked a lot about detachment and that kind of stuff. And I believe that when those kids are making those choices, it has nothing to do with me. It has to do what they think is best for them. And so I think it's supporting those conversations, having those conversations, identifying those issues early on to then be able to support them. Because when they feel supported, it's a much better experience no matter what choice they make than if they feel like you're judging them or angry at them or mad at them because maybe they don't want to be in 15 competition dances next year. Maybe they only want to do 7. And like, okay, we've got to talk about that and identify that and understand it more than be judgmental or trying to like hold on to something that isn't going to be the best it can be.
Yeah, I
If
think
that makes sense.
Yeah, it's so important what you're saying because from a studio owner perspective, it's a numbers thing, right? It's you're part of the bigger picture here that we've all been
Right.
working towards. And from the educator standpoint, teacher, choreographer, what have you, it is absolutely a personal blow because you've invested your time, your energy, your passion, your off hours that you're spending thinking about these kids individually and collectively at home. They're in lots of ways family. So you really do have to check yourself. I've been in that boat. I'm sure you guys have too.
Me too.
It feels intensely personal, and you want to do everything you can to change their mind. But the most successful transitions have been when I have talked calmly through a situation with the parent and the children, heard them, listened to them, and resisted the urge to convince or beg or persuade to make a different decision. Because ultimately, you want a core group of kids who are there for the right reasons. You have to know, I was talking to somebody yesterday, you have to know the why of your program. You have to be very clear on the goal for your program. And if they're not fitting in that framework, it's not good for them and it's not good for you.
Right.
Right. Absolutely. Culture is like by far the biggest it determines how successful you are and how successful your kids are and how much they want to be there and how much the parents are involved. And it takes a long time to develop. And people ask me not to like jump into like my conditioning because that's nothing to do with this conversation. But people ask like, how long does it take for you to see a difference? Well, like 9 months of doing it regularly. And so when it comes to developing a culture, and that's how people view and experience you, that takes years. And it's being willing to do that work and be invested in it. And when you can shift the culture of your studio or your team or wherever you work or your company, that's when everything else starts to really fall into place.
Yeah. But it does require an intense ability to be able to check yourself constantly because you have to be consistent with that.
I was going to say sacrifice. You have to, anything that's not consistent, anything that's not aligned, it has to go. And sometimes that means people, places, things, ideas that you really, really love. They're just not aligned. So that is absolutely, absolutely true. So we're in competition season. We're all pulling our hair out. We're about halfway through. And so maybe we're not pulling as much hair out as we were in the beginning. But do you think that competitive pressure contributes to students losing motivation? Because I know that when I get stressed, it becomes a situation of I just don't want to do anything because I can't do everything. You feel like
Right.
I'm never gonna get this done, so why am I even doing one?
Yeah.
I tell people all the time, how much work do you have left? Well, I could do 5 minutes or I could do 5 hours.
Right.
It's kind of a choice at this point how much work I have left to get done. So do you think that that pressure sometimes of competition and the way that we seem to be allowing and sometimes even pushing students to the level of overextension?
Well, it's funny, like that I just talked about culture and I wrote down notes for this. And my first thing about the pressure of competition is it's all in the culture and how it's presented. So that's like the first thing that I wrote down, talking about the pressure of competition. And the next thing I wrote, which we've already talked about a little bit, if you aren't remembering your why, and that includes everybody, from the teacher, the choreographer, the studio owner, the parents, the kids. If you aren't remembering your why, then it is going to feel like pressure. And there's a conversation that my students and I have been having recently because we have a competition next weekend, and I've asked them, do you want to be well rehearsed dancers or do you want to be well trained dancers? Which one do you want to put on stage?
What was their reflection?
And all of them said they want to be well-trained dancers. And to be a well-trained dancer, there's sacrifices, there's commitment to excellence, there is willingness to fail, because we're trying to get better every time we do something. We're not trying to just repeat the same performance over and over again. And so that might not always be successful. We might try a new style. We might try a different song. We might try something that is outside of our comfort zone and that doesn't make us bad when we go to competition if we don't place well. It makes us growing and developing. And so where I teach and what I believe is like the competition is a bigger picture to develop life skills that you need to be successful in life. Failure, teamwork, accountability, like all of those things come into play. And I think when dancers can get those lessons, it's much bigger than the size of the trophy you bring home. And so we really, my kids, I mean, they're so pumped for next weekend. They're so excited. And that's shifted over the past few years because they used to get overwhelmed and feel like they had to be at a certain level. And we've developed their confidence. We've developed their belief that what they're doing is enough. Developed their ability to see greatness in one another and their teachers and their teammates that aren't even in the same level as them. And so when they can really see and appreciate everybody's hard work, no matter what the outcome is at the end of the weekend, like they leave feeling good. And so I think that that's, in my opinion, the most important lesson. Some studios compete because they want to win, and that's okay. And that's great for them. And that's not how I function. That's not how I teach. That's not how I choreograph. And if we do well, we do well. And if we don't, we learn something. So there's not a lot of pressure here. And if kids feel pressure, then I wish that they could approach it maybe a different way, and see the benefits of all of the other things and really see if that balances out the trophy. So that's kind of where I'm at when it comes to like pressure and motivation. Just their overall commitment to growth is much bigger than the outcome of competition.
So in creating this culture, have you noticed a reduction in the amount of kids you're losing? Or
absolutely.
Okay, so you feel like it has made a difference in terms of the drop rate, or is it just that you're at peace with it? You know,
well, we like our oldest group of kids, there's 14 kids in the class. Those kids started dancing at the studio when they were 3 years old. Every single kid that is in our advanced class, so even our 19-year-old, she started dancing at this studio when she was 2. So I've taught here for 7 years. So like we've lost kids, of course, everybody loses kids, especially this year with the pandemic and everything. We lost about 10 kids off of our comp team. So like we lose kids. Some of those kids go dance somewhere else because that commitment level is better for them. That expectation level is better for them. And at the end of the day, great, because it wasn't going to work long-term here anyways. And we gain younger kids, but we don't really lose any older ones. So once they've committed, they're in it. And the parents are in it. the teachers are in it. We're all kind of aligned. So it makes it so much easier to like collectively work together.
That's great.
How in the world, and I'm totally off topic, going down the rabbit hole, the well-trained versus well-rehearsed is a concept that I have tried to sell many a time, and I have had so many kids and parents who just aren't buying. They're not down for what I'm selling. And the idea of being well trained, like this is not about your super titanium platinum double star crystal trophy that you're going to get. This is about if you go and you audition for Point Park, or you go and you audition any NYU anywhere.
Yeah.
They're not going to ask how many platinums you have or how many diamonds you won.
Well, so let's talk about that, because it really is motivation versus inspiration. And motivation is that the competition is the payoff. It's the payoff for all the work and all the blood, sweat, and tears they've put in since day one of that season. And it's a little bit short-sighted, right? But people love the tangible. They want something that they can experience and feel right now to make this all worth it. And it's really hard to see, at least I found anyway, especially for the older kids, to see the value in something that hasn't happened yet, something that they can't wrap their brain around yet. And do you feel like that's the case?
There's a really good podcast, Passion for Dance, and her very first episode is about motivation. And it's like 27 minutes, and it's for dance teachers, but I've had my older students, so my top 2 levels, so they're middle school and high school, listen to it and take notes, and they took over 4 pages of notes. And we looked at it and we talked about it. And intrinsic and extrinsic motivation exist, and she talks about, Chelsea's her name, Dr. Chelsea, she talks about how neither one of those things is necessarily good or a bad thing, and that motivation, whether it's a trophy or whether it's a recognition or a scholarship or somebody telling you did a good job, that's okay to be motivated by those things. And I think sometimes we're like, we shouldn't be motivated by that because that makes us seem like we're only doing this for the trophy. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like as a choreographer, I love to get a choreography award. Right. I love them to get recognized for their good technique. Don't get me wrong. Like I'm not lying about that. I love when they get those awards, and I'm not doing it only to get the award. So it's understanding how to be motivated internally and what does that look like for you. And I think driving it home consistently on a regular basis in the classroom and not focusing all of our energy on this dance or this competition or this convention, and really making it be a developmental process about the whole person in class, then those other things are added motivation, but it's not the only motivation. And we don't talk about competition all the time. We don't talk about how we're going to place. We do competition, we place, we get in the overalls, or we win this and we're excited and we celebrate. And then on Monday we come back and it's back to work. And
I was going to say, that's so important. The way that we handle the results from that weekend, whether it be what we wanted or not wanted, the way that we address that and carry on going forward with those results is extremely as important too, to model the behavior and set the example for the way we want our kids to feel and act. And so I think that's really important too. We have a comment here from Jessie McKenna. She says, can you offer any insight into working with students who have come from a toxic study environment? Positive reinforcement, encouragement, etc., has not seemed to counter much of the conditioning they've had. Rome wasn't built in a day, but I would like to be more effective in helping these dancers rediscover the joy of dance. Jessie, thank you for that question.
Yes. That's kind of one of the questions that we kind of, that you sent about the praise versus critiquing. And I think it's the common theme when I went through and like really thought about this conversation and motivation is all about communication, and it's all about support. And so it's not going to be like a quick thing that you're just going to like switch it on and they're going to change. They have to be able to develop trust with you. They have to be able to develop trust with their teammates. They have to be able to feel supported and feel seen and feel heard. So I think that it's definitely a relationship that you need to build with them. And that takes time. Just like any relationship, it's not just going to happen. A kid's not going to walk into a studio from a toxic environment and then just jump into your culture. It's going to take time. And I think that relationship building in general is really key to success. I know a lot of teachers, because there's been a lot of conversations on like dance teacher pages about like drawing a really hard line between the teacher-student relationship. And I understand that. And I understand where that's coming from. And at the end of the day, your students are humans and you're a human. And at the end of the day, you want a relationship. Humans are not meant to be independent, exist independently. So when you're in a classroom, when I'm in a classroom, I'm always talking about, we are on the same team. We are working towards the same thing. What do we want to accomplish today? What is it that we need to do? So that way the students feel that I'm with them. I'm not commanding them to do something.
Yeah.
And that's something that was in that podcast about motivation, talking about giving students a voice and giving them the ability to contribute. And I think like I come in the classroom and I'm like, okay, we're rating the day 1 to 10. Where are we at? And the kids will be like, oh, my day was a 6. Oh, my day was an 8. Oh, I'm at a 9. Oh, girl, like blah, blah, blah. And we talk about how we're rating our day and we talk about where we're at and we're talking about what's going on. And that open dialogue, that first 5 minutes of class creates the energy and the support for the rest of class. And knowing where my kids are and knowing that somebody was a 6 and somebody was a 9, okay, I can support that 6 today differently than the kid that's at a 9, you know? And so it's understanding those where they're at and how they function. And then that's going to help kind of foster their excitement and their energy to be there. I'm sure whatever this dancer or dancers came from, like, they're probably scared. They probably don't know how to show up. And so you're really teaching them and their classmates are teaching them. So encouraging team bonding, encouraging conversations, encouraging team goal setting, encouraging anything where those new kids can work with the old and see how you work as a team is going to help support them. And it just takes time.
Yeah, and I don't think that it's always on the teacher. Like, we don't have to always carry. Like you said, if you have some students who are a 9, partner them with the 6s.
Yeah.
And
bring them up. Yeah.
Have you help them carry this load?
Yes.
The same thing with students who come from other studios. You want them to adapt to your culture versus injecting your culture with their culture. So
yes,
you have to make sure that you have your body and students partnered with and engaging with purposefully those new students who are coming in.
Yeah, thank you, Jesse. I hope that helps. I hope that helps you. Thank you for the question again. You guys, if you're just joining us, this is Beyond the Steps, and we are here with Kelsey Nelson-Lack, who is a dance educator, choreographer, director, professional dancer, all the things. And we're talking about how can we effectively and safely motivate students who may lack motivation. I know this is a big one for so many of us. We're going to head into the last segment. So it can be frustrating when you see a student that oozes potential. And, you know, we've talked about that a little bit, but they seem completely unwilling to do the work necessary to meet that potential and meet the opportunities that may be in front of them. What do you say to a student like that, or to a parent of a student like that?
So this is something that I learned at Lululemon, but it wasn't created there. Asking why 5 times. I don't know if you guys have heard of that before. If you ask why 5 times, you're going to get to the root of any situation. So, if a dancer is like having a bad attitude and not like finishing the progression all the way across the floor, being like, Sally, why didn't you finish that exercise across the floor? Well, they're going to give you some reason. Okay, well, why was that the reason? Well, then they're going to answer that. Okay, well, why did you feel that way? Then they're going to answer that, ask why 2 more times, and you're going to get pretty close to the root of whatever it is. And probably 90% of the time has nothing to do with the progression whatsoever. It's probably they had a really bad day at school, or their mom yelled at them before they got to the dance studio, or they're hungry. I mean, I'm not very nice when I'm hungry. So it's like whatever it might be, like asking why 5 times is going to get you deeper into the root where you as an educator can help support them, foster them, give them what they need to be able to find that motivation again. So that's something that's like really helpful, and that's just good in any relationship. So that's just like a life little nugget right there that you can use. Communication. So again, like I said, everything comes back to communication and honest communication. I think that's where we get like a little, I personally think that kids don't hear the truth very often, especially from their parents. And so they have this like foggy view of what reality is. And I'm not saying to be harsh or brutal, but I am saying an honest communication. I mean, I've pulled students out of class multiple times this year and just been like, what's going on? Because you're not showing up for yourself or for your classmates or for me. And like, it's not going well. And like, I'm not enjoying being your teacher. And giving them the space to then be able to communicate. And it might get a little hairy, it might get a little fuzzy, and you as the adult need to be able to like hold that space for that student to really get things off of their chest. And you can learn a lot just by having an honest conversation. And the last thing that I wrote down is accountability after commitment. So when you get that student to recommit after that conversation, like, okay, I'm committed to trying, or I'm committed to like doing the private lesson every week, or I'm committed to whatever, then you can't be afraid as an educator to then hold them accountable. Right. And if they don't rise, taking the necessary steps to make them accountable. So if you say, okay, I'm going to need you to do 3 private lessons to be able to get put back in this piece, and they don't do the 3 private lessons, well, then you can't then put them back in the piece.
That's right.
As hard as that is, you can't do it, because then your word has no weight, and then they lose respect for you. And then if there's no respect, then like they're not going to be motivated to do anything that you tell them or ask them to do. So it's really the accountability piece, I think, is really hard for people, and you can't be afraid to do it. So
I think that's the piece when talking to most educators, that's the piece that trips people up, is the follow through on the consequence, right? Like, yeah, like I said I was going to do this and they called my bluff, and then now I have to do executing that is the hardest thing ever. And you know, I've had to do it. Like I travel and teach, and I have kids that assist me, and I've had to do it with every single one of them, even though they're the greatest kids and I love them and they're like my children. Yeah. Every single kid that has assisted me, at some point I've had to be like, I'm not taking you next weekend, I'm going to take somebody else, and this is why, or I need you to do X, Y, or Z, or you're not going to be able to do this. And it stinks, it sucks, and like it's my least favorite part of like mentoring young people, and it's the most important part, because those kids have learned lessons that they still talk about, like from 3 years ago. Remember that time I didn't do what I was supposed to? Yeah. And you know what happened, and you never did it again. So it's that accountability piece that really will change the game. I love that. Thank you. A lot of times as a teacher, you know, you feel like it's something you did or didn't do when you have to hold a student accountable, or when you just can't achieve the desired results that you have in your head. You're like, I'm doing all of this. She or he or they have this amazing potential, and it's just not going the way that it should. And I've done all these things, and what is going on? What is your advice for teachers who are just frustrated and, you know, with a student that they can't reach? Make it about them. And that's hard sometimes because innately we want to make it about us. And my husband says that I make it about me all the time, especially when we're having disagreements. He's like, you're making it about you again. It's not about you. So I think that that's the first step, is make it about them. So have a conversation with them and ask them where they are. Ask them, why are you still at this dance studio? Why do you keep coming? Why do you make the commitment? Why, what is your why? What is your driving force? And if they can
if they can identify their why and really connect to it, then at the end of the day, that has to be what keeps bringing them back to what they're doing. And I think we lose it, and everybody does. I mean, I know I have, especially this year, there's been so many times where like, I'm like, I have emails from 2 weeks ago that I haven't responded to, and that's not who I am. But like, I can't do it. Like, and it's having to look back and be like, why do I do my job? Why do I commit to this? Why do I make these choices? And that reignites my energy to do what's necessary. And so I think it's remembering, like, why are you a teacher? Why do you have this podcast or this open conversation? Why do we do what we do? And I think it's communicating with those kids and making it about them and sharing your why. Because sometimes I think dancers, students have this, put their teachers on pedestals, which is a beautiful, great thing for kids to have somebody to look up to that isn't their parent. And letting them see that you're human too, and letting them understand, like, I'm not always like super inspired. And sometimes I lose my motivation or I forget why I'm doing this. I'm just here doing it. And like, we're all in it together. And like, we have to keep re-inspiring and motivating one another. And it's not all your job as the teacher. I think too, we think that it's our job to motivate these kids, and it's not all our job. It's our job to help teach them how to be self-motivated, because they're not going to go into the world and have their little cheerleader, their little dance teacher walking next to them as they go to job interviews, apply for colleges, apply for sororities or fraternities or whatever. Big life, relationships, life choices. Those things are not going to have somebody just like rooting them on, and it's them having to be motivated enough to do those things for themselves. And so it's our job to teach them how to do that. It's not our job to be the motivator all the time. And so I think that too, as a teacher, it can get really exhausting if we feel like we're always trying to do it all, and they have to take some of the responsibility themselves.
Right. Yeah. A lot of times when I get into a situation, if I've done everything that I can, I will often enlist the student on, what's the plan here? I've done this, I've done that. What do you suggest that I do? What is it you think? Tell me. I've done this, I've done that, I've said this, I've moved here, I've stood in that corner, in this corner, and I've recorded you, I've shown. What now, what do you think I should do next? And it's usually a dear and heaven look.
It's definitely it's when you ask people, what would you like me to do for you? And they don't expect to hear that question, it throws people off, and they realize that they don't even necessarily know what they want you to do. They just feel like it's your responsibility. And so I think it's that relationship, right? And developing that open conversation of like, what do you want me to do? And here's what I expect you to do. And how are we going to do it together? And creating an action plan, creating a set of goals, creating a timeline that will have that accountability piece and take some of the pressure off of you and put some of it on them.
Right.
But don't you think it's important to, depending on the age, of course, but to involve the parent at that point?
Oh,
because yes. I think it's extremely important that we're very transparent, that the parents are hearing, look, this is what we have agreed on. This is what has been done. This is what they said they wanted. And these are the issues I'm still having. So where do we go from here? I think involving the parent at that point is really crucial to what happens next.
Oh, absolutely. When we do like goal setting, like we did it for this coming competition, and we wrote out, I had the kids create their team goals. So they sat around, in little circles, socially distanced and all the things. And like, okay, what is a technique goal that we have? What is a performance goal that we have? What is an offstage goal that we have? Okay, what is that for our team? Okay, now collectively, you need to go home and you need to create 2 personal goals that support each one of these team goals, and making that homework. So we're not doing that in the class. You need to go home, and then letting the parents know the kids are going to be coming home, and I want you to talk to them about their team goals so that they can help create their personal goals, and including the parent in that conversation, including the parent in that process, so they see what we're doing inside the studio, especially now that, no studios are really having any parents come in. It's that communication with them, just like it's the communication with the kids, to get them on board, to get them to understand. And once they start to do that, then you're home free. Then you can do anything that you want, because those parents are going to be supporting you and saying great things about you at home, and telling everybody till the cows come home how wonderful you are and the growth in their kids. And that is what's going to support your business and your growth. And so the parents are really that like turning point for sure.
Yeah.
So it sounds like the goal setting is kind of leading into our next question, because that seems like something very proactive that can be done. And we've been talking about reactive. So what do you do when a kid's losing motivation? How do you get them back? How do you get them back? But can you give us an example of, or a few examples of things that you do that keep them motivated, that keep students from losing that motivation? What are some proactive things you have in
Yeah. So like I said, goals, I have that written down, and talking about them and having open communication and posting them and sharing them and holding each other accountable and just really being aware of what we're trying to accomplish. I mean, we've even taken the goals posters to competition, hang them up, like set them out so we can see them, so we can read them, so we can remember them. So it's that piece that's really, really important. I've also been doing more, asking them more questions, especially my middle school and high school age kids. What do you think we need to work on today? What part of this dance do you think needs the most work? Like I'll have them listen to their critiques from competition and say, what did you hear the judges say? Because what I hear the judges say might be different than what they heard the judges say. And so asking them a lot more questions, getting them more involved in the process keeps them more motivated, because they feel like they have skin in the game. Like it's not just us telling them what to do, they're a contributing partner. And if you're a contributing partner, well, then I don't want to be the one to drop the ball, right? So getting them into that, and also giving them, especially this year, but just in general, giving them time to connect with one another. In the podcast, she talked about how you do better work when you're around people you like. And you're much more willing to go to work. You're much more willing to make a sacrifice. You're much more willing to really push yourself if you're with people that you enjoy being with. And so, give them a 5-minute break to just sit and talk to each other. Give them a chance to like tell a funny story from school. I've had them last year I would do at the beginning of every class, tell me something great today. And in the lobby before they come in, they have to talk to somebody in their class. And when I say, tell me something great today, they get to share their teammates' exciting thing that happened in the day. So it's not their great thing. They had to communicate with somebody else and then get to share and celebrate that. So it's getting them to like openly become one. And when you feel like you're a part of something, you're much less likely to back out of it or to not do your best. So I think that those are 3 areas that I try to focus on, that has made a difference. So I hope that's helpful.
It is very helpful. You're so wonderful. It's remarkable what you're achieving with your students in your program. We are going to move to homework, because we like to give homework for people to evolve and make progress in all the things that we talk about on the show. So what is one thing you want our listeners / watchers to take between now and next week to kind of make some progress here in their own studio culture?
So I wrote down for your action item, talk to your dancers. So that's what I wrote down. And I think sitting down with your kids for 5 or 10 minutes and just asking them how they are, asking them where they're at. I mean, we've been going through this for like a year. So there's a lot of learnings that have happened. I have my kids journal every class, and their journal prompt this week was, think about a year ago and then think about today. What has changed in you over the past year, and what are you most proud of? And I think asking the kids, talking to them, what is their perspective? What is their view on the world, on the dance industry, on what they're doing at the studio? I think just having a conversation, and wherever that might lead you, is where it's supposed to go, I think you're going to learn a lot about your kids, and I think you're going to learn a lot about yourself. And that is kind of a jumping off point to start really digging into, okay, how can we work together to be more motivated as a collective unit? And I think that could really change a lot.
Thank you. And so everybody get to work, have those conversations this week from Kelsey. We love resources on the show. So I know Kelsey brought up the podcast which Melissa has put in the comments here in the chat. We also highly encourage you to take the Steps 2020 Initiative course. This is a 4-part virtual course series. It's going to tackle everything from racism, gender inequity, sex abuse and prevention, integrative science, nutrition, and of course, dance medicine and science. And the goal with this course is really to provide evidence-based research and resources for you to kind of dig in more on your own, deeper into these layers. But we want to create safe, healthy, happy dance spaces for everybody. And this is a great way to do it. So whether you're an educator, a parent, a dancer, this is for you, and it's completely free. You can find that on our website. I think Melissa's going to she did put the links here in the chat, and you can go at your own pace. So it's a great course. Check it out if you have a chance. There's no time limit or anything like that. We also want to highlight our friends at YPAD, they are creating educational certifications to keep kids happy, healthy, safe, and dance, and promote that healthy studio culture that Kelsey's talked about so much today. We're also going to pop a link in so you can get 25% off of a YPAD certification using code APOLLA25, all capital letters. And then do you have anything else that you wanted to share, Kelsey? Any other resources that we may have missed? That I just don't want to miss anything you had.
No, I
shared a lot. I mean, the plenty, but I want to make sure I don't skip over anything.
I think, I mean, I don't have any like resources at my fingertips. I think it's just, stay educated, keep researching, keep reading, keep having conversations, keep listening to podcasts, keep looking to find what works for you. I don't think that there's any one way to do anything. And that's the magic in this world. That's why we're all here, is because we all have something different to contribute. So I think it's just keep looking and keep growing. As long as you're growing as an educator, your kids are going to keep growing in that studio.
And hopefully this show today gives you some inspiration to continue to dig deeper and figure it out. We talked a lot about that today. So Melissa, take us home.
Kelsey, I want to let everybody know, how can people get in touch with you to conditioning program, or just you in general as an educator or choreographer? How can they reach you?
You can follow me on Instagram. I post on there pretty regularly. So KJN Dance. You can visit my website, kelseynelson.com. I'm also on Facebook, and you can also email me at kjndance@gmail.com. Any questions, comments, thoughts, I'm always open to a conversation. I'm happy to try to help wherever I can. So yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This has been an amazing show. I cannot imagine how much this is going to help dance educators out there. I mean, we touched on some very, very important topics, and you have just been amazing today. So thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
As always, we are here every single Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern time. Next week, we are going to be with Katie Garvey, who is dancerfitness.com.
Yes.
And we are going to be talking about the dreaded block schedule that we're doing right now. Tips for helping students, preparing students mentally and physically for getting through this competitive block scheduling. So it is very timely here at the midpoint. We all realize that we're going to stay in block scheduling to the end. We're not getting out of it. So this is the time that we are going to talk about that and give you some tips and tricks. Kelsey is giving you the homework for this week, so make sure you have those conversations with your students. If you have any topics, we are now planning for our summer topics. It's hard to believe, we're already looking into June and July of what we're going to talk about. So if you have anything that you want us to share or talk about, or something that's on your mind, please find us on Instagram, find us on Facebook, private message. You can definitely let us know. All episodes are going to be on Apollo Performance's Facebook page under the video section, as well as on my Instagram page at TPDC_on_IG. In the bio, there's a link there. They're all on YouTube. You can watch those as much as you want. And if you would like recordable or recorded episodes that you can download, if you join us through the Zoom link, we automatically get your email address and send those out to you every single week.
And please share them.
Share. Yes, you can share these afterwards. We would love for you to invite anyone and everyone to take part in this conversation. So thank you, Bree. Thank you, Kelsey. Thank you, everyone who is here in Zoom and everyone who's out there on Facebook Live. And until next week, I hope you continue on your journey beyond the steps. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Happy Friday.
Bye.
Happy Friday.
Thanks, Kelsey.